Hello, welcome to the Claret podcast. My name's Dan Rolinson and I'm joined here this afternoon by John Townley to look back at Brighton, and we'll look ahead a little bit to Zrinjski Mostar on Thursday this week as well. John, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks, Dan. Brilliant win on Saturday and 2 games coming up, which I think we can win as well, and then we'll be in a really good place for the international break. So yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Are you okay?
Yeah, really good. We've just about recovered from Saturday's thriller at Villa Park, haven't we? Me and Matt did the post-match show together for the first time this season and for the first time in a long time, just because our schedules align that way. But it's nice to have a conversation with somebody for a podcast sat together in the same room. It's a lot more natural than doing it like this. But as we said in that video, don't expect this to be the norm. It took me about 3 hours to upload it the other night, which is ridiculous, really, when you consider you do it live and it's just gone and out there. But yeah, a really, really brilliant win, and we'll talk through little bits around that game this afternoon as well. What was your just general reaction to that? I mean, we the most ardent Villa fan might have predicted a win and thought we'd go toe-to-toe with Brighton, but no one's out there calling 6-1, are they?
No, I'm still a little bit shocked of the manner of the result. I certainly thought we could win the game. I think I put a 2-2 draw, but that was mainly because it kind of, I don't know, it could have gone either way, really. I knew there was going to be goals, but I was, wanted to sit on the fence, I suppose.
Actually, you're wrong, mate. I've just checked the predictions Excel sheet. You said 3-1.
Did I?
So not bad, actually.
Yeah, a fantastic win is a singular kind of, 3 points, should we say. But to win 6-1 and kind of make that statement, blow Brighton away, and play a different style as well. We went more direct. We played to our strengths. That's what John McGinn said after the game. And yeah, that's what you're going to get with Unai Emery, who has a vast experience of winning football matches and being successful as a football manager. And Roberto De Zerbi is a top manager in his own right, but they have kind of, I'd say, one way of playing Brighton, whereas we've shown that we can play different ways. We can go direct. We can play like Brighton like to as well at times. But against them on Saturday, we knew exactly how they would play, and we knew exactly how to beat them, and we did it in emphatic fashion.
Yeah, we'll talk about that tactical flexibility in a sec. I was up early this morning with the baby, and as it was on proper telly, let's say, this week on TNT Sports, I actually watched the game back first thing this morning, the whole game, about 7 a.m. or whatever it was. Do you often do that? I'll open this this question to the comments as well. It's a strange thing to watch the game back when you know the result. It's different. Obviously, match of the day is different, isn't it? Because you're only really watching the goals. To watch the full 90, there's no jeopardy of what's going to happen, because I know the result. I know we've won. I know we've battered them. So you watch it with a different outlook. It's quite strange.
Yeah, I don't tend to watch games back just because it's like obviously quite a lot of time. I'd like to watch it back if I had access to like Scout or whatever, and kind of speed it up. Maybe that would be a way of doing it. I know John McKenzie, who we have on the podcast, he watches loads of games in a week.
Did you see his tweet the other day? Like he watched 40 games or something in a week.
He's brilliant. Like, honestly, the only game that I've watched back that I know the result of from a Villa game would have been back in like 2012 or something, when we beat Liverpool 3-1, in the green kit. But no, I don't watch games back. I wish I had the time to do it. And you probably learn a lot from it as well, to be fair.
It's a different thing as well. Obviously, if it's an away game and it's on TV, I wouldn't have watched it back, because my first instance of watching it would have been on the TV. But because I was there on Saturday, you watch it very differently in the stadium with the viewpoint you've got, without replays, etc. Jump on a podcast with Matt straight away, watch match of the day. Had a whole day, obviously, yesterday, Sunday, with nothing, and I watched it back again this morning. It's just a strange thing to do when you know the result, because you're watching it from a different aspect. It's not you're not focusing on the ball all the time. You're looking at, Kamara's doing something interesting there, or Matty Cash versus Matoma. That's an interesting battle. Things that you kind of take for granted when you're there,
and without any emotion as well. You're not watching it. Kind of just hoping the ball goes in the net. You are working out little patterns and stuff. So yeah, definitely something I'd like to do, but kind of got no time to do it, really. I mean, you have time because your baby wakes you up at 4 a.m. or something, don't you? So I don't wish that on myself, to be fair.
I've kind of set myself up here for this being like this really super insightful, tactical, analytical podcast.
Probably we were all waiting.
Let's take Ollie Watkins as red then. This is what we did on Saturday, me and Matt. He's man of the match, isn't he? He scored a hat-trick. He's got an assist as well. And I thought, as I said on Saturday, his all-round game was very good. He's that focal point of Villa and dragging the attack forward and whatnot. Take him as red, as man of the match. Who kind of stood out besides him for you?
I think considering the game plan that we had, which was to go more direct, stop Brighton's patterns of play. I think Kamara was key to that. And especially in the first half, he was excellent. Matty Cash obviously had a big job against Matoma, and Matoma will always beat his fullback a few times in a game because he's that good.
Yeah.
But on the whole, Cash dealt with him really well. There was a moment in the second half, I believe, when Matoma goes down the left. Villa were, I think, 4-1 up at the time, or maybe even 5. And Cash puts in a big tackle and kind of celebrates it like a goal, which was great in front of the lower Trinity towards the North Stand. So, yeah, I think those two players were very good. Douglas Luiz is just top draw in general. So he's becoming a player now where you don't say it every game that, Luiz is playing well. Maybe last year we did, but he's taken his game to another level, and he's up there with midfielders in the Premier League for me at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And he got a yellow card early as well, didn't he? And he dealt with that challenge, and he's on 4 yellow cards now, which is crops up a talking point that we'll get to later. Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit though.
Oh, mate, that's really deflating.
On Kamara, you're right that he's certainly back to his best now, isn't he? He played very well last week as well. I thought in the first half he's kind of tracking Ferguson, isn't he? He's like the man marker. He's shutting down any opportunity for him to receive the ball and deal any kind of damage. I think it was interesting the way Villa almost not played too Brighton sides, so I don't want to put it down to that, but obviously we're 3-0 up at half time and the game isn't won, but we're in a comfortable position. Then De Zerbi makes a triple change of, I think it's Ansu Fati, João Pedro and Lamptey come on, I think, at half time.
Yeah.
So changing a Stupin and at left back and the whole forward line, and Ferguson goes off. There's a start period where it's kind of like Kamara, I felt like Kamara was like, who do I deal with now that Ferguson's gone off? But I thought it was interesting, and my point here again, and don't want to make it sound like I've come this analytical head just because I've watched the game back once. But I felt like it's interesting that we adapted to playing 2 styles that Brighton played. Yes, they still want to build from the back and everything that comes with that. But the way they've changed the forward line poses a totally different challenge for Konsa and Torres to have 2 pacey forwards to deal with there. And again, I thought we adapted to that well and kind of beat 2 Brighton sides, for want of a better phrase. Yeah,
well, when the team sheet came out, I looked at their bench. I wasn't kind of comparing it to ours, but I looked at their bench and I thought, well, they have a lot of kind of game changes there. As you say, Pedro, Fati, they had Dahoud on the bench and another couple of players, I think, as well. Like even Van Heck, who's a centre-back, but I think he's excellent. I was a bit surprised to see him start that Hinchelwood guy. I think that's how you say it.
He's 18.
Yeah, and he's clearly, a good player. But I think maybe the wrong game to bring him into at Villa Park against John McGinn and other players who were very physical. But what you were saying there, Dan, I was worried actually at the start of the second half when Villa came out, because they came out very slow and Brighton had those changes, and you just felt, well, if Brighton get 1 goal, Villa are on the, could be on the back foot for half an hour here against a Brighton team that will, pass you to death and will make chances. So I think
could
that
score 3 goals in the second half themselves.
Yeah. And actually, I thought up until Watkins scored Villa's 4th, we were very much on the back foot. And if Brighton got another, which absolutely was a possibility, you're going into the final 20 minutes or something, with only 1 goal to show for what was a brilliant first half. So one negative, I suppose you could say, out of that game, if you can pick out a negative, that we were on a back foot in the second half and we did start slowly, and that could have cost us if Watkins didn't get his goal, and it was a deflection, not to kind of take anything away, but we kind of we were fully deserved of the win. The 6-1, I will say that I'm not sure if Zaniolo was offside for the first goal, and I do think it was probably a foul on Solly March. I think that's probably one that would be given potentially for the home team if, I don't know, Danny Welbeck fouled one of our players and they scored from it, because he does kind of go down on him. And
you're on about Luiz?
Yeah, sorry, Luiz, yeah. Luiz on March for our second goal, I believe. But yes, we deserve to win the game. 6-1, I think maybe was kind of, we were very clinical, put it that way. And I think there was maybe a couple of decisions, but we were excellent and we fully deserved it. It was just at the start of the second half, sorry. We came out slowly, and maybe we were kind of rocked maybe by De Zerbi's changes and a couple of things in the second half. I keep saying the first half.
Brighton were never going to be as poor as they were in the first half in the second either. And I was wary that if we conceded an early goal in the second half, what you said there would go on to be true, that they kind of play us to death, maybe get a second, and then it's a ropey Villa Park. Brighton are capable of doing what we did to them, to other sides as well. And once they're already 3-0 down at half time, I'm not saying they're going to come back and win 4-3, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Brighton side does something like that. There was a guy near us that was saying, we just need to get a foothold of the game here and keep the ball for 5 minutes and kind of kill it. And then Watkins scores. It's like, okay, 4-1, that should be enough. And then Villa obviously get the 2 later on in the game as well. But overall, a kind of fascinating matchup between two very, very good sides who expect to be up there towards the end of the season. And we were saying in the preview show that we were doing that we'd be kind of semi-happy with a draw against a good Brighton side. And you made the point of, well, if we're both competing for the top 6, we're playing them at home. They're a direct competitor. Like, you have to kind of beat them, really. So to do it in the manner that we did, it's a massive tick in the box, isn't it, for the early season statement?
Yeah, and I mean, Newcastle, we were well beaten by in the opening day of the season, but there was a lot of factors to why we lost that game so heavily, and we don't think we actually deserve to. But then Brighton thrashed Newcastle at home, not by a huge scoreline, but they outplayed them completely, and then we outplayed Brighton. So it's between those 3 teams who are all going for the same places. It's a very weird dynamic. Obviously, we now go to Brighton, and we have a very good record at the Amex, and then we play Newcastle at home, and we beat Newcastle well last season at home. So yeah, more weird games I'm expecting in the coming weeks, but it's nice to beat a direct competitor, because at the start of the season, I keep saying it, but we've had games against teams that I think we should beat, apart from your Newcastles and Liverpool away games. Anyone can lose there, but to beat Brighton and to win against Chelsea away, that's the kind of marker now that I needed for Villa. The kind of, Villa will be up there again this season, judging off the start that we've had in the league. But I do have questions about whether we can kind of juggle both Conference League and the league, just based on, I know it's only the first game, but then the Carabao Cup one really kind of shocked me a little bit in terms of how we rotated, and then the kind of drop off in performance. But we'll get onto that later.
Yeah, I still don't think we're getting the huge recognition.
Oh, we're not. We're absolutely
from
not.
Either pundits or
no way.
Which, doesn't really bother me, to be honest. I'd rather Villa kind of go the way they. It's strange though, because Brighton are like, I saw someone say like Brighton like the media darlings, aren't they? The trendy hipster club, De Zerbi, playing the way they do, blah blah blah. It's like, well, over the course of when De Zerbi's been there and Emery's been there, I think Emery's got a better record anyway. And maybe, I don't know, I think Emery's just got this reputation of being a negative manager or whatever, which just isn't true if you watch Villa every week. Yeah, as I said, I was watching it back this morning. There was a moment where I don't know why it was being mentioned, because like I said, I'm only like half watching. I've got a baby to deal with as well, by the way. It's not like I just get up and like, you sit there and I'll watch the Villa for 90 minutes. But I think Villa were 4-1 up. And Dan Fletcher and whoever the co-commentator was talking about like an exciting Brighton and being like, oh, they scored loads of goals. And like, if you want to watch an entertaining game, you watch Brighton. It's like, hang on a minute, we're 4-1 up against this side you're raving about. It's absolutely bizarre, really. But, we're, 5th now, I think, in the league after the results from the weekend. We were 3rd, obviously, at full time. Had a brilliant start to the season now, 5 wins out of 7 in the league. I think the only thing we're missing from like getting some kind of national recognition is beating kind of like a title challenger.
I'm not sure, mate. I don't know. Beating Brighton 6-1 is crazy. We've won 10 matches at home. I think it's one of those where like, ultimately we don't care, but we still talk about it because it is a bit. I don't know. I was listening to we don't have to name the organisations because ultimately it's it's kind of a
name them and I'll bleep it out and that'll create more intrigue.
But I was listening to like a show or whatever, and they were kind of going on the main talking points. And by the way, there's loads of talking points from the weekend. Obviously, Wolves beating City, the VAR trouble across the league, but also in the Tottenham game. And then they try to focus on West Ham. And I don't even know what West Ham did at the weekend. I can't remember. They beat Sheffield United 2-0 at home. And they didn't talk about Villa thrashing Brighton, who were one of the best teams in the division, 6-1. It just strange. I don't know. And maybe there's more in it of the I don't know. They don't yield fan call-ins from Villa fans or something on their stations. I have no idea.
How was it TalkSport?
I'm not. No, there's a lot of phone-in shows. I actually can't remember if it's TalkSport or the other one. But yeah, it is a bit strange. I don't know. Weird because we score a lot of goals. We are very entertaining. We've got a big backing at Villa Park. Like every game.
This season, even when we lose games, it's an entertaining game in that we've conceded a fair few. So Villa should be like
But the main
mouth that we're not.
The main thing to me is that no one apart from Man City has got more points than us since the turn of the year. Like, we're pretty good. Yeah, we deserve more recognition, but it's not something that the club will really care about, I don't think. And it's not something that we should care about. It's just you'd like to have more praise.
And what's kind of like a meta point in this whole discussion is that this is why this a massive choice of Villa podcasts that all do very well. Because if you want to go and listen to some analysis or some thoughts even on Villa versus Brighton, you're not going to find much of that on the national channels. So that's why there's so many Villa podcasts doing well, because if you want that content, you go to YouTube or you go to Spotify or wherever and you listen to Villa fans talking about it, because you won't get it anywhere else.
Maybe it will take for Gareth Southgate to call it Watkins Ramsey concert for them to actually kind of get some sort of recognition, but
that probably won't happen, will it? Let's talk about Watkins then, as you brought him up. I'll start with some quotes from him post-match. He says, "I feel like since the manager has come in, I've come into my own. When I get on a goal-scoring run, I feel like there was no stopping me. I'm just getting warmed up now. There are plenty more goals to come this season. I think I've learned a lot in a short space of time. My movement, my mentality, being patient. As a striker, the best example is Haaland. He doesn't touch the ball for 20 minutes and then scores. It's learning little things like that. There's a coach I worked with closely, Rodri. I work with him every day, extras out on the training field. Sometimes we don't even do finishing practice. We may just watch videos and analysis. He is the key for me. He has helped me so much. Credit to him because he helps me so much." We've spoken a lot about Watkins this season for various reasons. And we said, didn't we, before the Chelsea game, if he doesn't score this week, I ain't talking about him anymore. And since then, scored 4 goals in the league. And we're now talking about Watkins in a positive fashion, which is what we want to be doing. What did you make of him? Besides the goals, I thought he played well.
Oh, he was excellent. Yeah, I thought he was top draw. Take away the goals, and I always say this about Watkins, that he doesn't have to score goals to impact the game. And I'm not going to go on a 5-minute kind of rant about it again, but he just gives so much on and off the ball. We score a lot of goals when Watkins doesn't score himself. He plays a part in that. He doesn't just stand there. Although he said in his quotes there that he's trying to play his game more about being less involved and kind of having the finishing touch. And that's what we saw in the first goal. And the second goal was brilliant as well, because he cuts inside, which we see a lot, but he's got a lot to do to beat Steele, finds the near post with the plum. So yeah, he could have scored 4 in the end, couldn't he? But again, every striker's going to miss chances. He's there for the opportunity, and because he's there, Villa still score the goal anyway. Yeah, Emery said to him when he's not, or Emery says to him when he's not scoring, that like it's okay because you're going to get chances, and when you get chances, you're going to score goals. Not every time. He said that he missed a couple of chances at Burnley, but it's not a big issue because it's always an issue when the strikers don't get the chances, or it's, you know, that's when it becomes an issue, or when you're not scoring for 20 games or something like Malpay or whatever. But Watkins is going to get double figures again. I still think he'll get at least 15 goals. I said he'll get 20, and I think he probably could get near that this season. He's got 7 goals in all competitions, I think, already. Mm-hmm. Granted, 3 were against Hibernian, but he said to the press after that it's kind of shut a lot of people up that he's now got one against Brighton as well. Like, it's not just doing it against Hibs. Yeah, he's a top player. I thought his all-round game was excellent as well. He occupied the centre-backs. His hold-up play was brilliant. He's just always a threat. And yeah,
and even just taking away his attacking contributions to, you know, creating space for the players or making triangle passes or whatever it is. The key before there was even a goal in that match is the press. And we spoke about Villa having to play a high line and how to play a proper pressing game. Watkins is excellent at that, and so was Diaby as well, by the way, against Brighton. Him and Watkins were key to making the game pan out in the way that it did before we were even talking about an attacking contribution or specifically a goal. That kind of off the ball play and the kind of intelligence that they've got, include Diaby in that, who's also proven to be very good at it so far. Like I said, that creates the way the game unfolds anyway. I know he has to get a lot of chances to score, but chance creation isn't really a problem for Villa. So if Watkins is in the right positions and Villa make chances, he will score on average a goal every couple of games, won't he? So, and we've said before, that's pretty much a standard for what we expect from Watkins. So I think you're looking at 20 goals all competitions fairly comfortably if Villa go far in the Conference League and, you know, get past the 3rd round of the FA Cup. 15 in the league would be, again, another brilliant achievement. So yeah, all the best to Ollie Watkins, I think.
Yeah, exactly that. And he's a player that needs support, as in literally on the pitch, players around him, and because he's so good at linking play. When we had Gerrard in charge. Sorry to bring it back to this, but when we had Gerrard in charge and the former Rangers manager, Michael Beale, we had like Coutinho and Bailey as like 10s or Buendia or so. I can't quite remember actually. But it was Watkins kind of isolated on his own.
Yeah.
And that was never going to bring the best out of him, but now he has he's got a left back bombing on down the side. He's got John McGinn. He's got Douglas Luiz moving up. He's got Diaby, Ramsey. Like, there's so much around him to make opportunities, and he doesn't have to have a touch in those moves. By the way, it's just say he drags defenders away because he's the number 9, and that's where defenders will be attracted to. And it showed for the first goal because he was just in the right place, and Villa's build-up was excellent. McGinn's kind of slide rule past to Cash. I don't know if he looked up, but he doesn't have to. All he's got to do is put the ball across the box because Watkins will be there to put it away. And yeah, for the season, he's going to get goals. It's just, can we not please, when he goes on a run of 3 or 4 games where he doesn't score after going on a run of like 4 or 5 scoring, there's no need to kind of, I don't know, criticise him for not scoring in every game. It's not going to happen. If he did that, he'd be getting Haaland figures. Seriously, there's like a clamour for the striker to score in every game, and if he's not, and if he's missed the chance especially, it's it's not good enough. But come on, he's a top player, and we're going places with him leading the attack as he has done for the last 3 or 4 years. So.
And also the improvement under Unai Emery specifically. So he signed in September 2020 and scored 29 goals between then and when Emery joined in November 2022. Since then, he scored 21 goals. We
always say that he's quite a streaky player. I don't know exactly what that comes down to or why, but his streaks are getting longer, if you will, as you say, Dan. How many games has Emery had in charge in terms of league games now? I think it's, 32? We played 7 this season, so 25 last season under Emery, I believe. So 32 league games, and I forget how many goal contributions, but it was nearly 30, I think. Remarkable. And that's not even like a full season, if you will, in terms of league games under Emery. So, yeah, he's a top player, and I'm delighted that he's back amongst the goals.
In Emery's 32 games for Villa in the league, he's got 64 points, so 2 points a game.
2 points a game,
Pep Guardiola's first 32 games for Man City, he also got 64 points. So, when we're talking about where do we rank Emery last week and how many times has he beaten De Zerbi and the media darlings and blah, blah, blah. Emery's a very good coach, everyone. Let's just keep flying under the radar because no one seems to realise it.
It's a remarkable story how far Villa have come under Emery, and it's not something that's been played out in the wider media landscape as I think it would have been if it was another couple of clubs, even the top 6 plus Newcastle plus West Ham plus others maybe even. I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem to be us.
Everyone hates Villa. We don't care. Let's talk about Watkins and where he ranks in all-time Premier League goal scorers for Villa. Now, as we know, Gabby Bonlahor is top of that list, isn't he? And has been for what feels like an eternity with 73 Premier League goals, which I know to some people feels like a bit of an injustice because of the way his career ended, that he kind of fell off basically, and he was here for such a long time. Should probably have had more than 73. Let's face it.
Scored his goals, though,
I know. Less of the Gabby bashing, but he did fall off anyway. In that list is Dwight York second with 60, Dion Dublin with 51, Juan Pablo Engel with 44, and Ollie Watkins now with 44. Watkins had 41. Benteke had 42 before the weekend. Obviously, his hat-trick boosts him up a place to joint 4th in that list. I don't really know what kind of point I want to make here. One is that if Watkins signs a contract and that is now the talking point around him, when is that going to be done? If he does and he's here for 2 or 3 years, I said on Saturday, he will be our Premier League top goal scorer. He's 29 behind. Is it 29? Yeah. He's 29 behind Gabby as of today. If he's here for another 3 seasons, he will score 29 Premier League goals over the course of those 3 seasons, and he will be our top scorer, which will be nice. I suppose the wider talking point here is that on that list of almost the top 10, you've got Carew, Joachim, Saunders, Gareth Barry, Benteke, and the 4 names I've just read out before Watkins. Whatever you think of Watkins, and if you don't think he's good enough, is one side of the argument, which I personally don't agree with. But for him to be even where he is after the games he's had so far, and that he could be, second on the list or first on the list, depending on how long he stays, he's talking about this need for a 20-goal striker or whatever the argument is, and you need to improve on Watkins. Where he is on that list is already very good, and he could obviously go on to be better than that. But the names I've read there, some of these are like 25, 30 years ago. Like, strikers like Ollie Watkins don't come around very often, is probably the point I'm trying to say. And so I think he probably deserves a little bit more respect.
Precisely. I mean, I think the 20-goal striker thing was maybe something that Villa fans talk about because I think that's probably what's needed in the Championship. I don't know if that's a relevant point, but I don't remember many fans kind of saying, we need a 20-goal striker in the Premier League, really, because I don't think anyone has done that in the Premier League for Villa, have they?
No, probably not. No.
I don't think they have. I think that's the talking point. So don't buy it anyway. If you're a good enough team, you don't need a 20-goal striker unless you go for the league. So we can do with Ollie Watkins getting 15 this season, and we'll have enough goals in the team elsewhere. Douglas Luiz has scored 5 home games in a row for the first time since, I think, Dwight York.
96.
And Luiz is a midfielder. There's goals everywhere, and that's the key thing here. It's not to look at Ollie Watkins and say, are you going to score enough over the course of the season? Like, firstly, yes, he is. And secondly, if he didn't, I think we'd have enough anyway.
For the rest of the show, then, we're going to do a fan Q&A. I asked for questions on social media yesterday. Anything Villa you want to discuss, let us know. I've not kind of vetted these before we started, so we're going to go through these in a pretty random order, John. So some of them might be things we've already talked about, in which case we'll kind of gloss over them. We'll start with Jay. He says, how good was McGinn? I know Watkins gets man of the match, but McGinn was immense yesterday.
I said at the start of the season that when Villa win, and especially when they win well, McGinn's going to have at least an 8 out of 10. I don't think he dips below his standards very often, and if he does, he's still going to play to a very decent level. And yeah, he was very good against Brighton, as was the rest of the team. I think it was like one of those where, to a man, Villa were just excellent. There was no weak link. And McGinn, for what he gives in terms of his powerful running, his the way that he drives the team forward, and there was a few niggly fouls in there that I noticed too, a few tactical fouls which might kind of go under the radar, but also quite evident as well when he did them, but needed against the Brighton team who like to build up possession. And the longer they have the ball, the more likely they are to make a chance, because the opposition kind of just, they might lose runners, etc. So yeah, for McGinn to play a key role defensively and offensively, as Emery likes, that was key. He was asked about McGinn, the last question in the press conference, and he said, yes, Super John McGinn again. So he's fully aware. And yeah, another top performance from him.
Question from James, or comment more so really. Talk about Watkins' TNT Sports interview, particularly the final part of the interview regarding contract talk. Extremely awkward. They were, whoever the presenter was basically lining up for, maybe we can get an exclusive here on his contract by saying something like, you've had a great day today, you got a hat-trick. The Villa fans now would love to know whether you're kind of any closer to signing this contract, which is, I don't know if the journalism is the right word, but it's a terrible question, a line of questioning for me to put him on the spot like that just after the end of the game in front of the Villa Park crowd. I think some fans will look at that as his answer was basically like, I'll let my football do the talking and these things will happen when they happen, or whatever, words to that effect. He didn't say anything, basically, but I don't expect him to. He's not going to come out and say, no, I'm not signing it. And he's also not going to say, yeah, I'm going to sign it, because if it's not done yet and there's things still to be finalised, it's a situation where there's moving parts. So bad questioning from TNT Sports, I would say, rather than Ollie Watkins was coy about it. I don't read anything into his answer at all, and I'd prefer players not to be asked questions like that when it's basically none of their business.
I think there's probably a time and place for it. I think it's a relevant question because it's the question that's on everyone's lips. If fans want to know about it, you need to ask about it. But just after a game where he scored a hat-trick and he's not thinking straight necessarily, like he's got his adrenaline running, you don't want to kind of trip a player up, really. And I'm glad that Watkins kind of played it off, really, because if he said something that which he could have quite easily said something that was either emotional or whatever, I don't know, then fans would take that as kind of, gospel. There's a part where Emery was asked about in the game against Chelsea, and he said that he's concerned about it. And then the next question was, what do you mean by concerned? And then it's like, no, I just mean what he meant was he's aware by it. So it's one of those where those questions can quite easily be,
misquoted.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm just glad that Watkins said the right thing. But at the same time, coming from a journalistic point of view, I think that question's bound to be asked. It's what everyone wants to know. So I don't think there's anything wrong with asking it. But in the environment that he was in, probably not at that point.
A question from Jar on Twitter. How on earth do we keep hold of Douglas Luiz beyond this season? Champions League qualification? As in, do Villa need to do that to keep him? The lack of Brazilian selection is also a concern. We know how much representation means to South American players. I personally feel like Pep Guardiola will be back for him, but at least we will be heavily compensated. What do you make of Luiz's time at Villa in terms of, can we keep hold of him?
Yes, I do. For a start, he's obviously signed a new deal recently. That doesn't always mean that they're there to stay for 10 years. He loves the club. He loves the people at the club and his position as well. He's improved immeasurably over the last year under Emery. In terms of the Brazil call-up, he was called up to the Brazilian team when Villa were scrapping relegation. So I'm not too sure that him moving to a different team would kind of increase his chances. And the Brazil national team call up players from, all over, players from the Brazilian league, which is obviously weaker than European leagues or the top European leagues. I don't know exactly who's keeping him out. I presume it's Paqueta and Guimarães, but Luiz is playing at a level that puts him at least equal with those players, and they are exceptional players, so it's very hard to get in the team. But I don't think that would be a motive for him to leave Villa, put it that way. I think the only motive he would have to depart would be if a top team comes in for him and they can give him Champions League football and also promise him game time, because if you're looking around the league, there's certain clubs that I think he would get in for, but certain teams that he possibly wouldn't. I think Arsenal are playing a very different way this season, but Arteta is a massive fan of Luiz. Obviously worked with him at City, bid for him 3 times on deadline day last year. Yeah. After he scored a corner against Arsenal, like literally the day after they were bidding. So, there's no shortage of interest. But what you would say is that as long as there's no release clause in that deal that he signed with Villa, there's a huge fee there. If that deal was to come around. And that's the position Villa have put themselves in now. FFP is an issue for any team, and as we keep saying, that don't have Champions League football or, huge revenue in terms of sponsorships that teams like Newcastle now have. So Villa need to bridge that gap somehow. And I'm not saying that they're going to sell players to do that, but if it came to the point where Arsenal, for example, did come after Luiz and they were putting down big money, well, then there's a positive in there as well for Villa. So it's one of those where, yes, we want to see Luiz stay, absolutely. And he's crucial to what Emery wants to do and how Villa play. But I don't think it would be a situation where if he was to leave, we'd be, crying about it. It would be on our terms, put it that way. It's going to be a big fee, again, as long as there's no release clause, which, I'm not sure of. Hopefully there isn't. But yeah, we don't want him to go. But if it came to that eventuality, there'd be a huge fee involved, I'm sure.
Question from Ricardo says, no, it's a tad early, but which one position do you think Villa should or will target in the January transfer window? Matt actually said in the post-match show that we might need a couple of loans in January to kind of keep the squad depth up. Where would you look to?
I think midfield I'd look at. Obviously Tielemans is he hasn't quite had the impact that he would have hoped for after joining, and I don't think that's anything against his ability. I think it's just more, is he capable of stepping into a midfield that doesn't have Douglas Luiz in it? I'm not too sure. I don't think he's he can progress the ball, Tielemans, but I think we need a bit more around him, and I don't think we have that when he does play. And that's not to suggest he doesn't have a career or anything. He can still make an impact. I think you've just got to have specific players around him. I think you need to probably have something in place of Kamara. I know we have Dendonka, but I'm not sure he's as available as what Emery would like, potentially, in terms of giving exactly what Kamara does. Maybe defence as well. I know that Lenglet's coming on loan and we have Tyrone Mings out, but Lenglet struggled against Legia. Chambers as well. Is he at the level to kind of compete for minutes? And Emery said in America that he's not actually looking at Chambers as playing as a centre-back. He's like a holding midfielder or a right-back. So again, there's not much to kind of say about there. And I know Carlos is coming back. But you need strength and depth, as we've seen, because as soon as Carlos drops out, then we're limited on, I think, quality centre-back options in midfield as well. If Luiz misses a game, then what do you do? Do you bring Tielemans in? But then you do lose a lot in terms of what Luiz brings. So it is difficult to add to your squad. And I think Villa have found that out, actually, in the summer window. I think Zaniolo's been a brilliant addition. And as has Tielemans, in terms of it's a free transfer, it's like a very low risk. But I just think maybe, is he exactly what we needed in midfield, or is another option? But maybe there's something else that we need as well.
I'm going to combine 2 points here in one. You just mentioned there about what do we do if Douglas Luiz is out, and we mentioned at the top of the show that he is on 4 yellow cards now. The next question is from Mastro Lindo on Twitter, who says, "What are our expectations for the next 5 games?" So I'm just going to include this as Premier League games here, because obviously we've got Zrinjski Mostar on Thursday.
Yeah.
The next 5 league games are Wolves away, West Ham at home, Luton at home, Nottingham Forest away, and Fulham at home, which looks on paper a very favourable run of fixtures for Villa to pick up some points. Mm-hmm. So it's a twofold question here, and I'm going to reword my Luiz question to you in a different way. From a points perspective, how many points should we be looking at from those 5 games, 3 of which are at home? And when should Douglas Luiz get their tactical yellow card to miss the correct game? So I would be thinking cheeky tactical yellow card against West Ham and miss the Luton game at home in the Premier League. It's a very cynical way of looking at football.
First, on the first question, you go you go to try and win all those games. It probably won't happen, but that's the mentality you go with. And you see how many wins you get. I'd be disappointed to lose any of those games, and I know that sets high standards. It's a good run. Try and win them all. Maybe we might draw 2. We might draw against West Ham at home and Forest away or something. I don't know, but you got to try and win them all, because those are all games that, again, if you take them in isolation, Villa should try and probably be winning to finish in the top 6, top 5, etc. On the second question, obviously, if there was a game to pick, you'd pick Luton. No disrespect, but they're the worst team in that run.
I think Wolves away is going to be very difficult. They've just beat Manchester City, and we are notoriously poor against them anyway. West Ham at home is a 4:30 kickoff on a Sunday on TV. Another tough game. Luton, you look at on paper as being one of the easiest there. Forest away is never easy. Forest are good at home, or generally speaking, they can be good at home. Fulham at Villa Park, I'd expect us, any game at Villa Park, I expect us to win now because we're so good there.
I know I've just said that we need to go into every one of those games and try to win, which I stand by. But as you say, Dan, Wolves away and West Ham at home are 2 games that in previous years we don't win. So that will be another kind of tick in the Emery box of, he's kind of broken all the records already, hasn't he? But those games where, we lost last year under Emery, didn't we? And at home we lost to West Ham again under Gerrard. But those games where previously we haven't got anything, and maybe because those teams have had, our number, that sort of thing, if we can go there and get the right results, then fantastic. And Forest away won't be easy, but actually at the start of the season, I haven't been impressed by them at home, which again is, as you say, last year they were strong at home, but they just about beat Burnley. No, sorry, they drew to Burnley, which was lucky because I'm not sure the goal should have been ruled out at the end for Burnley. They just about squeezed past Sheffield United, I think, in the last minute. At home, they haven't been particularly good, Forest, I don't think. So, and I think we're that team now where we're good enough to just go to places and win, as long as we play to our best, and it's going to be very hard to beat us, especially. Hopefully good points haul over that run, and that will probably keep us in at least the top 7, you would have thought.
Let's talk about the European game very quickly. Some of the other questions are about like sustaining league form, so we'll end on that instead. Obviously Villa are at home this Thursday in their first European night at Villa Park, besides the Hibs game, for 13 years or so. It's all of a sudden a big game now, isn't it? That you'd probably be looking at that opposition as the easiest team in the group, and probably still are, despite them winning the first game against Alkmaar. At Villa Park especially, you've kind of got 2 factors there, haven't you? It's the easiest side and you're at home. So, on paper, that should be a win for Villa. However, as you've alluded to, when Villa rotate beyond their strongest 11, we haven't quite figured it out yet, and for whatever reason, it's either that the players coming in aren't kind of up to match speed and kind of don't get with it, or aren't kind of at the level required to play the way Emery wants them to play. The flip side of that is we can't just keep playing our strongest 11, because there's different priorities, isn't there? If you play your strongest 11 on Thursday, you might then suffer at Wolves on Sunday.
And it's a game that Villa should win, and I know I've kind of questioned rotation and whatnot, but with all due respect to Mostar, they're a team that Villa have to be beating at home. I'm kind of to and fro, because one part of me says we need to play strong team just to get the win, but you are right. Villa are going to have to rotate later in the season, especially. So maybe this is a game that builds confidence for certain players. I don't know, maybe Longley or maybe Tielemans. But my question is that I don't know if certain players are actually capable of stepping into what Emery wants to do, whether they're good players or not. We might not actually see that because of maybe systems or certain tactics that Emery's trying to deploy, but can they do it? I'm not sure. So that's another question in itself. But against Mostar, there will be changes, and I expect us to win anyway. And I think it's probably one of those games where if we were drawing 0-0, say on the 60th minute or 50th minute, then bring on Diaby, Watkins, those guys that came on against Legia. And we probably should have won that game in the end, even kind of all things considered. At the very end, we were knocking on the door and we had big chances. So yeah, I would make changes, try and build some confidence in those players, because Mostar we should be beating anyway. And if you are in a sticky situation, say in the second half, you can bring on firepower and still hopefully get the job done.
Well, have we not learnt our lesson that we should be doing the reverse of that and starting strong and changing at half time instead?
Yeah, my only thing with that is that my point about Everton was that you play a strong back line because you're playing a Premier League team still, and a team that can still win the game if you're not at your best. But with all due respect to Mostar, I don't think there's an excuse there. We're still playing players who play Champions League football in Tielemans or Longley, or I'm not just picking on those two, by the way. Other players,
they're the easy rotation picks, aren't they?
Yeah, the Nogs played in quarter-final of the Europa League with Wolves, and those players are still more than capable of beating Mostar at home, and there is no excuse there. And against Everton, I was shocked that we lost, but I wasn't wholly surprised because we made certain changes.
Would you start Martinez or Olsen?
Martinez.
Agreed. What about in terms of rotation for fitness reasons? Is there a case that because it's only this game and Wolves and then the international break that we don't need to rest anyway?
No, I disagree, because players are going to go to international break, aren't they? Villa rest, but although it's not going to be the whole squad, you're still going to have some players who are going to go. There's going to be changes, whether we agree with it or not. Duran will play, Zaniolo will play. There can be no excuse to not win that game, whichever 11 you pick, in my opinion.
Famous last words. Let's see where we are on Thursday night. Last couple of questions to end the show then. Actually, I'm going to trial a new segment that I've not told you about, John, but we'll get to that in a sec. The last couple of questions I'm going to combine as one because they all say the same point, really. So from Dr. AVFC, what do we think our goals are for the league? Top 4, top 6? Top 3 will probably be City, Arsenal and Liverpool in some order. Then you've probably got Spurs, Newcastle, Villa, Brighton in that second tier, possibly competing for the final places. Humberto Solano says, can we challenge for the title? 4 points off the top. And John Smith, is our squad big and good enough for a sustainable top 4 challenge? Now, before we get into that, I spoke before, haven't we, about it being a top 5 for the Champions League, whatever specifications it needs to be for that to happen. I'm pretty sure probably will happen. So top 5 should be a Champions League spot. How do you assess all those questions? Are we good enough to compete? And what are our goals for the season?
I think the final question was the key one in terms of, do we have the squad to compete for the top 5 and go for the Conference League? Because we want to do both. And until we see that answer, it's very difficult to say. I don't want to limit Villa too much. So that's why I'd say that I think our Premier League target should be top 5, because we've proven in the opening weeks that we can compete. I know we lost against Liverpool and Newcastle, but again, I think there's certain reasons why.
I think you can forget about them to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think especially Newcastle. And the squad is improving a lot. I think goes under the radar as well, Pau Torres, about how much he's improved.
Yeah.
We're not talking about him, and that's the key thing. I just think come February, March, that's when it's going to get proper in terms of squad rotation, in terms of juggling the 2 competitions, and Villa could be in 8th in that part of the season, and then it would be closing it down to, okay, well, can we get top 7 and qualify for the Conference League again, or maybe the Europa League, in case we don't win the Conference League. So I think as long as Villa are knocking around the European positions towards the end of the season, and they're in the latter stages of the Conference League and have a good chance of winning it, I'd snap your hands off for that, if I'm honest. I know Champions League is a dream, but I think we'd have to do so well to get the Champions League this season, judging by how well Tottenham are playing. Liverpool are better. Yeah, it's going to be difficult.
I'll come at it from 2 angles. One is that I've said already, I think Villa will compete for the Champions League places. Although in the end of the season show I said we would do it. I kind of adjusted that, didn't I, in the season preview, that we'd at least compete for it.
You said top 4 as well. So
Yeah, but top 5 is still allowed. So I think that is also true. Villa are good enough to compete for it for the bulk of the season. I'm not saying we definitely will, but we should be.
Yeah.
We said this on Saturday. I think that last year Villa were always playing catch up, weren't they? This year, I want us to always be up around the top 6, 7 all season and be, moving around places week on week, depending on results. I don't ever want to be in a position where we drop down to 12th and have to make up ground and we're going, I really hope Tottenham lose this week, so we need to jump up 7 points on them. Like I want to always be like level pegging around those sides and it go to the wire. I've said before that it's key for Villa to remain in Europe now. Now that we've got to it, I don't want it to be a one-season fling. I want to be in at least the Conference League again next season as a bare minimum. To end the show, John, then, I want to introduce a new segment which is unnamed at this stage, so viewers of the show can name this part of the show if I try and explain it as best I can. It's a part where I just want to talk about something random. It could still be Villa related, or it could be a wider football talking point. A bit like in the Inside Bodymore preview show that we do when we go like away from match day and we talk about, the new kit's out, or let's talk about this hospitality thing, and it's away from the bulk of the conversation. So obviously today has all been about Brighton and league ambitions and whatnot. So this could be a segment about a Villa point or some silly thing you heard on Match of the Day or a wider footballing discussion. Something we've noticed this week that we want to speak about. That's the segment. We need a better name than that, though. The thing I wanted to bring up just for a couple of minutes, because obviously this is a Villa podcast, is the Liverpool Spurs VAR controversy. I still can't get my head around it.
When I saw it live, I said, well, he's onside, so it's 1-0. Diaz, good goal. I'm just not sure, like, what... It's hard to say without being, like, in there. But, like, what... It's quite simple, really. What are they doing?
What is happening at the
there's no I have no technical questions, which is the worst thing about it. It's just, what are you doing? I'm pretty certain all they've got to do is draw the line. 2 of them, by the way, an assistant as well. What are you doing?
The explanation that came out afterwards, obviously there's the apology from the PGMOL for the millionth time, what it feels like this season of, we messed up, guys, we're sorry. Well, that means absolutely nothing, does it, to anybody? Liverpool have also released a statement saying that they're going to look into exploring the options for what can be done about it. Now, I don't know what they mean by that, whether they want to replay or whatever, which seems unlikely. But even just opening the conversation to something needs to be done about the top level of officiating, that the explanation that apparently was given is that the VAR people thought that it had been ruled onside on the pitch. So when they said check complete, to them, they thought, well, he's given it onside, so check complete, we don't need to look at it. Whereas the referee had actually given it as offside at the time, and then they realised they'd made a mistake.
The moment in which the referees ruled it out, then just say, "Oh, sorry, mate, got that wrong. Yeah, it's offside."
Because they kicked off again, they can't intervene again. Which is
you can though. Like they're talking as if they are powerless. Like maybe it's a rule, maybe it isn't, but no one's going to complain. Like not even the Tottenham fans would have complained if they went back even 10 minutes. Well, maybe not 10 minutes. Just make the right decision. That's all we're asking for.
There's a clip as the game kicks off, and there's the first break and play. One of the sides is taking a throw in, and it cuts back to the referee, and you can see him. He's been spoken to because you can just tell. Like he looks zoned out, and then for a split second, he like nods his head and goes to blow the whistle and puts it down. So he was told in that moment, you've messed up, mate, or we've messed up. At that point, you can go to blow your whistle, go over to the managers and say, look, we made a mistake here. I know we've kicked off again and we've played 2 or 3 minutes, but
I don't know how
offside. It was onside. We need to just go back 1-0, start from there.
How do you get to that mistake? Like everyone's watching the game. Everyone knows exactly what's happened. Right, it's been called off.
They know what's happened, but for some reason they can't carry on.
They're the 2 people, the assistant VAR and the VAR, who should be most focused on the game or whatever. However you want to call it, not the people who are just watching it with a beer. It's been criticised because it's not obviously the first time that VAR's come under scrutiny, and it won't be the last. I have no idea what this. I know I get the whole thing as well. If you criticise it, you must have a solution. It's not my job to have a solution. I don't know what's available to the Premier League. I know that Premier League clubs, in fact, like overall, rejected the chance to have the kind of the World Cup.
The automated.
Yeah. I don't know why. That seemed to be quite useful in the World Cup. It's the whole thing's just a bit of a shambles, but to have human error on that level, I think is I just don't know how that happens. I know you can get human error from other minor things, but that was quite more than significant. That was just crazy.
Just something I wanted to bring up, a general wider talking point. As I said, this segment of the show could have been a 5-minute chat about something Villa related that we didn't get to in the rest of the show. So if you want to rename that segment from here's something I saw this week and wanted to talk about, please get involved in the comments down below. John, thanks for joining me. As always, every Monday so far this season, we've uploaded a podcast. So every single week we'll be here to chat about the latest Aston Villa talking points. Consider subscribing to Claret and Blue on YouTube if you enjoyed this. Leave us 5-star ratings on Spotify. If it's less than 5 stars, don't bother. Thank you for watching this one, and we'll see you again very soon.